In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. Okay. Are we set up there, everybody? Raphael looking good. Okay, Carmen and Rebecca's iPhone. Alrighty. Okay, so as I said last time, we are going to go over the first pathological marriage, which was, of course, Adam and Eve. Just from the beginning, everything was just messed up, right? The first marriage was messed up. And guess how long Adam and Eve were in the garden before they ate the fruit that God told them not to? One day. The first day they were created, they ate the fruit. Guess how many other trees they ate first before the fruit, the tree God? 0, none. That was the first one they ate, like nothing else. So just from the beginning, it was just out of the starting gate, crash and burn. So we want to make sure that no more marriages are like that. Right? So that's what all this is for. Last time, we learned about the human person, right? What is a person? We went into the highly, well, not highly, but the philosophical distinction. A person is an individual substance of a rational nature. A human person, you can have divine persons, angelic persons, or human persons. Human persons, first of all, they have their personality, their individual existence. They have a body, because we are humans, and we have a soul. Attendant upon the body are passions, hunger, thirst, feelings, and so on. The soul is where the intellect resides, which is made to know truth, and is also where the will resides, which is made to desire what is good. The person is where you get your kind of temperament from. You had your choleric, sanguine, melancholic, phlegmatic. Looks like the kind of Benedict cross there. And there was something else. Oh yeah, male and female. Male and female. So you have all these different things going on with persons. When you get married, you are marrying another person, and they have their own temperament. You are marrying the opposite of what you are, and so that's a whole new universe, of a whole new different way of thinking. You're marrying somebody. The body is what gives you the ability to be married, is your ability to procreate, and you are, as it says in the marriage exhortation, the souls of those who are married are knit together more closely than are their bodies in wedlock. So you are joining yourself to another intellect and another will. So you have all these moving parts going along in marriage. And did I give you the books to read last time? Yes? Which was what? What were the books? Oh, the temperament and something. Okay, I keep meaning to send out a list. For men and only. Okay, I said I was going to send it out. I didn't do it as usual. I promise sometime in the future I will send that. Right. Oh, right. Okay, so marriage itself has duties and responsibilities. So the man has duties and the woman has duties as well. And I think I mentioned last time about like God, when he makes something for a purpose, he gives it what it needs to accomplish its purpose. So women have what they need to be wives and mothers. Men have what they need to be husbands and fathers. Okay, so the husband, the man, the father, husband, father, and you have wife and mother. Okay. His primary job is to lead, and then another job is to provide, and then a third one is to protect. Did I do this diagram? No? This is new. Okay, this is new, sorry. I talk to a lot of people, and I can't remember who I tell what these days. I tell the same story like 3 different times. Wife and mother. Let's just, okay. So if that's his job, he's got to lead. What's the wife's primary job? Yeah, that's the, what do you call it, the trick question. Following is not her primary job. Her primary job is to counsel. Because what does a leader need? He needs help in making a decision. Because that's what a leader does. A leader decides. He doesn't have to execute the plan or supervise the plan. He doesn't have to come up with a plan. He just has to say, this is the plan. This is what we're doing. That's a decision. And there's way more to leadership than just deciding, but that's the essence of it. But to make a good decision, he needs counsel. He needs help. Just one man, there's things that I don't see. And where is he going to get the benefit of a different perspective? You get a whole different perspective from your spouse who sees things completely different. And let's see, also a different temperament. She could be any one of these different things. And hopefully you have somebody with a different temperament, and that is that's helpful, right, in seeing a different side of things. So the wife counsels, and secondarily, she follows. So following is something that it's not her primary job, but it's a follow-on of his primary job. And then what do you think is corresponding to the providing? The husband provides. What does wife do? Manages, right? He gives her stuff and then says, okay, do something with this, right? So you got manage. And then he protects and she nurtures. So you see a kind of a externally focused and internally focused. A leader is concerned with the future. What's distant? Where are we going? What's the end? Right? So there's this kind of distant, far, later on type of stuff. The wife, when she's counseling, there's some of that too, but she's thinking primarily, what about the kids? What do we need right now? What are the needs of the family? What are the needs inside the home? Right? So he's concerned with what's distant and exterior and far away, and she is concerned with what is interior and immediate. Provision is taking what's on the outside and making it on the inside. Right? It's taking exterior resources and bringing them home to the family. And protecting, once again, that is a protection from external threats. Keep the evil on the outside, provide a safe place for the family. What does a woman do? With resources coming in, she manages a family, builds a home, takes the resources and does things with it. What does she do now that I don't have to worry about external evil? I worry about internal good. And so she takes that safe space her husband has created and then nurtures the children on the inside. So a little gardening example, the husband picks the ground for the garden. He provides the seed, the water, all the resources, he builds the fence and stands guard. And then the wife says, I think we should plant this here. And okay, I've got these seeds. I'm gonna arrange the garden this way, and I'm gonna pour the water and make the plants grow, right? So that's kind of a way you can look at it. So each have their different roles. Okay, so that is the functions, and we're gonna send this over here. Okay. Now we're gonna get into Adam and Eve and their marriage, and we're gonna see how they failed and everything. Okay, that's fine. Let me give myself a little more room here. Intellect and will. There we go. Okay, so we all know the basic story. God creates this beautiful world for Adam and Eve to live in, and he tells Adam, till the garden and keep it. And that's interesting because this is mentioned in the feast of St. Joseph the Worker. Work and labor is not a result of original sin. This is before Adam fell. Before Adam fell, he was given a command to work the garden. But what was a punishment for sin was hard work. As God told Adam, because you have sinned, the sky will be as iron and the earth will be like brass, and it will not yield its fruit, and you will, by the sweat of your brow, you will earn your living. So fruitless labor, painful work, is a result of original sin. But man was made to work, and that's why men receiving a handout and living on the dole is not a good thing. Right? It is not a good thing for that. For men not to have a job to do, they're by nature designed by God to work. Let's see, as Thomas Aquinas says, when God created Eve, first he looked at man, and among all the animals, a suitable helpmate was not found. And God said, it is not good for man to be alone. and I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but men get selfish when they're alone. When they don't have to sacrifice for something, there's only themselves to care about. They focus inward. They get selfish and self-centered and so on. It is good for man to have to care for somebody else, to be responsible for somebody else. And even in like communities, you join a religious life, priests and monks, they most often live in community. Right? They have to care for a parish. They're surrounded by their brother monks. It's not good for men to be alone. So in both vocations. So Adam, of course, Eve comes from the side of Adam. And God had told Adam not to eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And we don't see in the Bible that God repeated that command to Eve. But when the serpent comes to tempt Eve, she says, we must not eat of the fruit or even touch it, lest we die. And so that the scholars speculate that Adam would have relayed God's message to her, which was the first hierarchy. God gives to Adam, Adam gives to Eve. And that did he add that, detail to give it to her or something like that? There's kind of some speculation there. But what we do see is Adam leading, right? Adam doing his job and telling, okay, Eve, here's what I got from God. Our end is to be with him. We can eat of anything, but not the fruit of the tree. So he's telling her, these are the rules. Here's what we have to do. This is my obligation to take care of you. And this is part of it, is letting you know from God what we should and should not do. And then that's the last time that something good happens to Adam and Eve, right? Then it just starts to go downhill from there. So then we have Eve being tempted by the serpent, who says, did God say you shouldn't eat of all the trees of the garden? And she says, no, not all the trees. We can eat of all the trees, but just one, or we'll die. And then he strikes, you shall not die. God's a liar. But your eyes will be open, knowing good from evil. And interesting, the Easterns on that note recognize that fundamentally, the tree of knowledge of good and evil was good. The knowledge of good and evil was a good thing, because God doesn't make what is evil, and God made that tree. And Eve looked at it, and she saw that it was good. It was pleasing to the eye, and so she took and she ate. So the interpretation of the Eastern Church is that God intended them to eat of the fruit of that tree, but not yet. They weren't ready for it yet. It was not time. Kind of like, a little child is born, and you buy a bottle of scotch and we'll drink this on your 21st birthday. If the kid's 2 years old and drinks a bottle, he's going to die, right? It's a good thing, but not yet. You're not old enough, you're not mature enough yet, whatever. So that's kind of a way of understanding the fruit of knowledge of good and evil. God, when Adam and Eve were mature, when they were ready, they would have eaten, and we could have avoided all this kind of stuff. But as it is, right, they were impatient. Like every sin is involved in that. They were disobedient, they were impatient, they were selfish, they lacked trust in God. It was like gluttony, you could say, a sin of gluttony, and so on. So Eve is tempted, she eats of the fruit, and then she gives to Adam, and he eats, and then their eyes are opened, they see their sin, and then they hide from God. Right? And then God finds them, and they are punished. Right? So that's the story. So where did we start going wrong? Just throw that out there. Who made the first mistake? Let's play the blame game. Let's do that. Who are we going to blame? We're going to blame Eve because she listened to the serpent. Where else can we give blame? How is Adam at fault?
By listening.
What's that?
By listening.
Yeah, listening. But I mean, before that. You're ahead of the game. He wasn't protecting. Where was he, right? And I think that's Scott Hahn who points that out, or some other biblical scholars, is they'll say, what was Eve doing talking to the serpent? Where was Adam? With his, stick or whatever it is, like smashing the snake, throwing it down, stomping on it and saying, get away from my wife. What's wrong with you, right? So Adam was absent. He was not protecting his wife from exterior danger, which is what he was supposed to do. Like that's part of his job as a husband. And you could say he's not providing either. You could say okay, yeah, sure, here's all the fruit of a whole garden and that's yours, but where was it? He didn't go get a basket of all this fruit and say, eat these instead. So yes, he did lead, but then he didn't follow through. He didn't provide and he didn't protect. So that was his mistake. So by the time Eve is talking to the serpent, it's already too late. And in fact, that is a mistake that men make in marriage, is what happened. Where was Adam? Was he off? Maybe he was off getting some fruit, right? Maybe he was off tilling the garden and keeping it, but you should have been back home. Where were you? Men tend to get lost in their work. They are absent from the family, absent from the home, and it can be physically or emotionally checked out. They're just not there, not protecting for their wife, not protecting their children, and they're not providing. It's not just physical stuff. Look, I bring home money, and you've got our house is paid off, and you've got nice cars, and the kids have money for this and that. What more do you want? I want you to provide for my emotional needs, right? I'm, as your wife, as a woman, I am more emotional. I have to be. I got to take care of these kids. I'm supposed to be more emotional. You can't just treat me like I'm some kind of man. I'm not a man. I'm a woman, and I'm your wife, right? And I need more than that. And that's a mistake, right? Is men, they want to treat women like another guy when it comes to their emotions. And you can't do that. You have to recognize that difference and account for it. That's part of leadership, is learning what women need. So that was his kind of two big mistakes, and men follow that. The first place to look for problems in the family is an absent father, right? He's just checked out, not there. So, of course, now Eve, for her part, is seduced by the serpent and takes of the fruit and eats and then offers to Adam. And now what's her problem, right? She wants to do his job for him. You can't lead, I'm leading. You told me what to do, now I'm telling you what to do, right? You need to take this fruit and eat. And he's like, wait a minute, we can't do this. She insists, right? And Adam is at fault for not telling his wife no. And men make this mistake, and they know they should tell their wives no, but they don't want to do it because it would be too hard. I should tell her no. What she wants isn't good, but it's not worth it. I'm not willing to get nagged or begged or pleaded or screamed at or whatever it may be. And women do that. Women will want their husbands to make a decision, and they will not give him any peace until he gives them what they want. But see, here's the sad thing. What did Eve really want? What did she want Adam to say? She wanted him to say no. And he didn't do it. Or maybe he did. Maybe Adam did say no at first, and then she pulled out all the stops. And she cried and threw a fit and all that kind of stuff that women do. All the while, what is she saying on the inside? Please tell me no. Take control of my emotions because they're controlling me right now. And that's the problem with women. Their emotions get out of control. They can't control themselves. There's a reason they call something hysterical. Do you know what a hysteron is? It's the womb. The hysteron is a woman's uterus. And when somebody's getting hysterical, it's like these women go nuts, right? And it's because of like their female body parts. It's just the hormones, etc. They have a hard time controlling themselves. And so in that regard, women can be very childish. They can throw a tantrum. They can scream and cry. They will beg their husbands to give them something. The husband gives them exactly what they want. And what do? They throw another fit. Because you gave me what I asked for, but that isn't what I wanted. Right? They'll demand something from their husbands. And husbands, forget it. Women do this with men. They want men to give them what they want, not necessarily what they say they want. You need to figure out what I need and give it to me because you're supposed to be the provider. And you're not giving me what I need. Well, what do you need? I have no idea. Figure it out. You're the man. You should know this. You're supposed to take the charge, right? Take control, take charge, and give me what I need. I don't know what I need. So all of that, you can see all this is going on with the first pathological marriage. And Adam says no, and she begs, and he says no, and she pleads, and he says no, and she seduces, and finally he gives in. And what happens after that point? Eve loses respect for him because you were supposed to do the right thing and you didn't do it. You were supposed to provide, protect, and lead, and you caved in under pressure. I saw it. I saw you cave in. I made you cave in, and I'm a weak woman. Right? If I can make you cave in, who else is going to make you cave in? Especially if a woman seduces her husband. And then she's like, I only feel as confident and secure as I am beautiful. And she starts getting jealous and suspicious of other good-looking women because she's like, I know he's prone to seduction because it worked on him. I made it work. And so who else can seduce my husband? Now she's insecure, and it's downhill. So you see, all of that is present right there in the first pathological marriage. Let's see, what else? And so Adam's life just goes downhill, right? And, God comes and calls him on the carpet, right? God goes walking in the afternoon breeze, and he says, where are you? And Adam's hiding, which is what men do. They hide from God, they hide from themselves, they hide from the world, they retreat into the shop, into the garage, into work, into their friends, into the bar, into the bottle. Men retreat. And what did God ask him to do? Adam, what have you done? Fess up, right? The gig is up, you screwed up, I know, I told you what to do, you failed, own up to it. What did Adam do? You're right, God, I failed. I was the leader. I was supposed to be in charge. I let you down. I let my wife down. I am sorry. Don't find that passage in the Bible, right? Adam blames his wife and he blames God. The woman whom you gave me the apple and I ate, gave me the fruit. You say, well, God, it's your fault. I was happy. I was in the garden, me and the animals were having a great time, and I was tilling the garden and keeping it, and then this woman comes along and ruins my life. And I'm angry at you, God, and I'm angry at the woman. And that's what men do. They blame other people and they blame God, and they sit there and wallow in misery. Don't be like Adam. Don't do that. Own up to your mistakes and realize that everything that goes wrong in marriage is the man's fault. I'm sorry, it's true. Every man knows this and every woman knows this. And that is why women are not wrong to blame you for everything. Even if it's not your fault, because it is your fault. Right? Because you're the man and you're supposed to lead. You're supposed to know this stuff. You're supposed to be able to figure this out. Right? And actually it is a sign of incredible confidence. When women think that you can control the weather, they're like, it's raining. I can't control the weather. What's wrong with you? And she's like, what's wrong with you? You should have prepared for this. You should have been ready for bad weather. Like you should have known it was coming. Don't you watch the weather all the time? Right? If a woman blames you for something, that means she thinks you could have controlled it. And what is that? It's a sign of respect. You could have done something about this because I have that much confidence that you know what's going on, you know what to do, and you could have done something about it. And that's all can be subconscious for women. They are blaming their husbands because you didn't do what you could have done. That means you didn't love me enough. You didn't love me enough to look ahead and think about what I would need if it started raining, if it whatever, right? So this is all built in. It's built into men and women's psyche. There's a mechanic who he won't stop and help him. If a woman is broken down by the side of a road, he won't stop to help her out. Because what he found after long experience, if he couldn't fix it right there on the spot, like, oh, what's wrong? Well, you dropped your transmission. Well, can you fix it? No, I can't fix it. Like, this would take a week to fix and it wouldn't be worth it. And then what do the women say? Well, if you couldn't fix it, why did you stop? Right? I didn't know what was wrong with it until I stopped. Right? So it's women, when they get, and it's not all women, right? This is not every woman. This is not you, and right? But this is, in general, that's the kind of thing that females are prone to, right? Remember that I talked about toxic femininity? That's the human person, the female human person affected by original sin. That's toxic femininity, is sin. Same thing with men. Men their masculinity becomes toxic when they give in to sin. They're naturally prone to selfishness and so on. So after Adam blames God and blames his wife and feels sorry for himself, God goes to Eve. And what does she do? Blames the devil, right? And I can't tell you the number of times, well, yes, I can actually, probably like a dozen. Women come to me, Father, I think my marriage is possessed. I think my child is possessed. Can my son get an exorcism? He's just not doing well. Like, it's always the women. I think it's been one man who's ever said that he thinks there's some demonic involvement. Well, the women always think if they could just get an exorcism, they just need more prayer, something's wrong with the marriage and it's the devil, right? There's this attribution to the occult or whatever. Right? It's kind of strange. But it's, the thing is, she blames somebody else too, right? It's not my fault, it's somebody else's fault. So you see that pattern in marriage. And that's what happens, is this resentment builds up between the spouses, that they play the blame game, they won't own up to their mistakes, the man won't lead, the woman won't let him lead, he provides but not all the way, not emotionally, and he kind of protects but not really. And he's leading. Where is he leading? He's not leading. Certainly not spiritually. He doesn't pray with the kids. He doesn't take it seriously, and so on. The wife nags her husband. He makes a decision. She nags him again. She criticizes him. He tries to lead. She cuts him down. She either squandering resources or spending it on whatever, or it's not enough, or it is enough, but I don't care, whatever. And nurturing, she's yelling at the kids and mad at her husband, and you see all the problems. So don't be like that, right? Don't be like the first marriage. Now, after this happened, after Adam and Eve were cast out of the garden, then what? Well, they learned from their mistake. So it says Adam and Eve lived for the next 900 years, and how many times did they sin? Not once. For 900 years, Adam and Eve wept over their sin. And imagine the pain of seeing the world without sin, seeing a perfect earth, seeing each other beautiful, radiant with grace, and then seeing all of that lost, seeing the horror of sin. We don't realize that this world, this beautiful world, is a prison. Right? This is still a prison. This is not our true home. And this is not what it really should have been. We have no idea the light of glory that Adam and Eve had, the supernatural beauty that God had given them. We have no idea what that would be like. Right? Absolutely amazing. So let's see, where are we? And, okay. I had this sudden fear that my mic wasn't on, because I've done that before many times. Stop that. Questions thus far? Okay, means it's all making sense. So Adam and Eve, let's see, they didn't sin again for 900 years. They wept for their sin. And I do tell this to moms especially when their children go astray. Adam and Eve never sinned again, right? And a great pain that Eve bore in her heart was when one of her sons killed the other one, when Cain killed Abel out of jealousy. And what do you think she was thinking when that happened? This is my fault. If I had just listened to my husband, this wouldn't have happened. If I had just obeyed God, this wouldn't have happened. If I had just trusted God, if only I had said no to the serpent, and you can imagine the resentment, if only Adam had told me no, it's not his fault, this is my fault. But she knew that pain she bore for nearly 900 years of living with the knowledge that this is my fault. That's pain. That's very painful. But when I tell this to moms whose sons go astray, she didn't sin. She never sinned again. She sinned once, and after that, never again. And so Cain and Abel had two of the best parents the world has ever seen. Those parents never sinned. Imagine if your mom and dad never sinned. That was Adam and Eve after the fall. They never sinned again, and still their children went astray. So you can't blame yourself for your kids. They have their own intellect and will. They have their own passions. They're their own person. They're going to make their own decisions, right? And so you can't say, I'm a bad parent. Well, what did you do? Well, I don't know, but I must be a bad parent because my kids didn't turn out. Right? That's not a helpful line of reasoning. I mean, it might be true, but we need more evidence than that. Let's see. Kids. Oh, right. Remember the garden analogy? With kids, you shouldn't think that you have to make your kids turn out this way or that way, because again, just as the husband has all this, the wife has all this, and every single time you have a kid, they got all this stuff going on too. There's all this, a whole new universe of feelings and emotions and intellects every time you have a new child. And no two people are alike. So let's take a garden plot here, right? So you got your little garden, and you got your like corn stuff over here, your stalks, and your squashes and your gourds over here, and you got like a little shade tree at this end. You got a little garden pathway, and then here's the trellis for the vines, right, that are all growing up. So you have all kinds of different garden plots. Well, this is like kids. Kids are different. You're going to have some kids are melancholic, and other kids they grow faster. These kids need more support than the other kids do. These ones are slow. These ones need more shade, right? You can figure the analogy out in your mind, right? Different people need different things. And you're going to make a mistake if in trying to raise your kids, you think all of my kids are going to grow like this. They all have to be the same way. All my kids are responsible except for Joey. He's so irresponsible. Maybe it takes him a little bit longer, right? So as parents, don't worry too much about the performance of your kids. Worry about their goodwill. Are they trying? And are you? Your job is just to provide a good environment. Okay, I've given my kids a good environment to become what they are. I don't know what they should be, but I teach them respect and discipline and goodness and virtue. They know their prayers. I give them a good example. I provide them with good soil and the water of love and compassion and punishment when they need it. So it's like a gardener. He doesn't make things grow. He provides a good environment so that things can grow, right? And they can grow and become whatever they're supposed to be. So that's how you should take it with your kids. Is your kids are going to grow up and be whatever they're going to be. Don't put them into a box, but give them good soil. Good soil, good environment, and they'll just become whatever, right? That's kind of I don't know, that's a little bit I borrowed that from a future lesson on kids, but it seemed appropriate here with right, Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, and so on. So that was the first pathological marriage. We saw how Adam and Eve failed in some of their basic duties. Spend some time thinking for yourself where you either have failed in the past, where you're likely to fail, or ask your spouse or prospective spouse, do we agree with what does leadership mean? Did you all take that focus exam? So a lot of questions are supposed to draw that out of you. But I would say, what does leadership mean? What does providing mean? What does protecting mean? What does it mean to nurture, to manage, to counsel? Right? And it may be hard when you haven't experienced it to come up with ideas, but keep that in your mind. Keep that in your mind about what this is going to mean down the road. And when you run into a difficulty, ask yourself, where is it? Am I not providing? Am I not leading? Am I not protecting? Am I not nurturing? Right? Kind of helpful. Dissect it a little bit. I have 15 more minutes. I want to make good use of time. What else? The first time we talked about why did God create marriage? What was one of the reasons why?
Procreate and bring souls to him.
Right? What's another reason?
Companionship.
Support, companionship. Another reason is to teach us about himself. Right? Marriage teaches us about God. In that in marriage, a man and a woman, they know that they are not complete in and of themselves. They need somebody else for the completion of their nature. And that is an analogy to God, because our soul, even as like our bodies, are incomplete examples of humanity. Masculine nature is not all of human nature. You have to have a woman, then you have all of human nature. But the soul is incomplete without God. And so there's that, remember that kind of like lower and higher parallel? So mankind, in having that sexual difference, men and women, needing another person to complete themselves, can abstract and think, well, then that's what it's like between us and God. We need Him to complete ourselves. So there is a parallel between man and woman and God and humanity. So, and there's three levels. So at the top, there's God and the soul, right? The individual human soul, we'll say. And that's the union of heaven, the beatific vision. So that's where marriage comes from. God saw, this is what I want with humanity, so I'm going to create a system by which they can know that that's what I want. Down here at the bottom, you have man and woman. Okay, and then this is marriage. This is natural. This is a natural marriage. This is supernatural. This is the beatific vision. Supernatural, beatific vision. There is a level in between. What is this level? This is Christ and the church. So you have, we'll draw Christ here, and then we'll draw, let's see, the church. That's like everybody on earth, right? So all the people, right? Boom. Christ in the church. We'll do a little PX here. Cairo. So these are three levels of symbolism that is representative of marriage. This is the ultimate and final marriage, and this is where we first see marriage. And so who represents Christ in the church? Right, priests, and you have the nuns, the sisters, but also just the church as a whole. Church as a whole. And this is why, okay, I would you say this? In the Old Testament, are there any indications that God, is there any parallel between God and humanity and marriage? Any passages which would indicate that? Nothing comes to mind? So, I mean, yes, there are references, I won't say everywhere, but frequently. In the Psalms, in Genesis with Abraham, in Exodus with Moses and the Israelites, and especially with the prophets, right? As you go on, Isaiah, Jeremiah, the prophets get increasingly more explicit about a marriage contract between God and the Israelites. So in the beginning, you have God says to Abraham, I choose you, of you I will make a great nation. I will make my covenant with you. And that's what marriage is. Marriage is a covenant. And it's not explicit yet, not that I remember at least, but God is saying to Abraham, I will make a covenant with you forever and your descendants. I'm going to make a covenant with you. When God says to Moses on Mount Sinai, he says, I will choose the Israelites. I will be your God and you will be my people. So let's get a little more specific. We're going to enter into this me and you peculiarly and nobody else. And how many other tribes did God choose in the Old Testament? None. It was just the Israelites. So you have a little image of monogamy there. Later on, the prophets will say, thus saith the Lord, you have gone after false gods and worshipped them. You have prostituted yourself before the gods of the foreign nations. Return to your Maker, for your Maker is your husband, saith the Lord. I have chosen you, and you have treated me like a faithless bride. What do they call it? Fornicating. You have fornicated with false gods by worshiping them when you ought to worship me alone. So it gets more and more clear God has taken a marriage relationship between himself and the tribe of Israel. Now, marriage on earth, so you have, marriage on earth is going to represent God's, let's see. So you have God as he always is, and then you have humanity as they currently are. So this is the current state of humanity. And marriage is going to represent God's relationship with humanity. What was his relationship with humanity in the Old Testament? It was one tribe. God has taken one tribe unto himself, But how many tribes was he going to take? All of them, right? All of humanity was going to be united to God in a marriage contract. And what is that going to look like? It's going to look like Christ and the church, right? How many more people is God going to take unto himself than he already has? Nobody. He's already taken all of humanity. Everybody's included in Christ's marriage contract with the church. Christ is the groom and the church is the bride. I saw the heavenly Jerusalem coming down as a bride adorned for her husband. Matthew chapter 22, the kingdom of heaven is likened to a wedding feast that the master gave for his son. So you have all this marriage imagery in the New Testament, and it's Christ and the church. When is Christ going to divorce himself from the church? When is that relationship going to end? It's never going to end. It's only going to end in heaven, right? Heaven is when that relationship is fulfilled, not ended, but fulfilled. Now, what happened to the Jewish covenant, right? So you have the new covenant, and you have the Jewish covenant, the Mosaic law, the Old Testament Jewish covenant. What happened right here with God's previous marriage to mankind and his current marriage with mankind? How do you end a marriage? Death. How was the marriage with Israel ended?
Jesus Christ.
Right. One of the spouses has to die. And so one of the spouses did die. Christ, God Almighty, died on the cross. And so the marriage covenant with the Old Testament Jews was now over. It had ended. And then he entered into a new marriage covenant with the church. And in fact, that is symbolized when what happened the moment Christ died? What happened to the veil in the temple? It was torn in two, right? And that veil over the temple, you have like the symbolizing the bridal veil. It's over, right? This marriage is done. Now, remember what I said. So in the Old Testament, what was the state of marriage on earth? Could you have multiple wives? You could have polygamy. It was permitted by God. Could you get a divorce? Yes, you could. It was permitted by God. Why? When you can't have polygamy in the new law, you can't get divorced in the new law, but you could in the old law. Why is that?
It didn't work.
It didn't work. Well, not practically speaking, because you have the same hardness of heart and stubbornness on both sides. Remember, it has to do with what is God's relationship with humanity? What was God's relationship with the Jews here? Was God going to take other tribes? Yes, he was. He was going to take all of them. And so that's what polygamy represented. Marriage is supposed to be between one bride, but I'm going to take more, and that's going to be my bride. So there's kind of a foreshadowing that God was going to take more tribes than just Israel. Was his marriage with the Jewish nation going to end? Yes, it was. And so that is kind of symbolized by permitting divorce. I mean, he wouldn't divorce, he would die, but that's kind of signified by this marriage is going to end. And so marriage in the old law was in a foreshadowing of what was going to happen, permitted to end to represent that, right? So that is God's current relationship with mankind is represented in marriage itself. In the new covenant, Christ will never stop being the bridegroom of the church. You can never get a divorce. And he will never be able to take more unto himself because everybody's included, and so you can never take more than one wife. No polygamy, etc. The purpose of marriage on earth is when you die, when your spouse dies, where do they go? They're supposed to go to heaven. And what happens in heaven? Who's their spouse now? God is their spouse, right? That's why marriage ends on earth, because their spouse is now God. And that is why, so once, he's run the course of his earthly life, and you put him in his grave, the wife is presenting her husband as, a bride for Christ, and vice versa. He's your spouse now. I've done my best. I have, encouraged and helped him to achieve sanctity, and now on the day of the funeral, the surviving spouse should be presenting her deceased as God's spouse now. Now, this is symbolized in the Requiem. the sung Requiem Mass, the gradual tone, one of the tones of the Mass, the tone at a wedding is the same as the tone at a funeral. The words are different, but the music is the same. And that's what it's indicating. It's indicating that you're hearing this, you're getting married to this man on your wedding day. The next time you hear that tune is going to be when you are presenting your surviving spouse at God's wedding day. That is now God's wedding day. And you had better be giving him a good spouse. So there's a responsibility there. And that's what marriage is. And this is why you can't get a divorce. And it doesn't matter how bad this marriage is. This marriage is awful. The kids are suffering. Can't we just get a divorce? No. Because guess what's more important than your marriage? Is this symbolism. Christ and the church. Christ will never divorce humanity. He will never divorce the church. It lasts until death, and God will never divorce humanity from himself. God always wants to unite himself to mankind. God will never reject you. If you allow divorce, this symbolism is broken, and that symbolism is broken as well. The impact is far greater. Marriage as a whole is more important than your marriage, right? So that is why, and this is why priests can't get married, because they're at a higher level of symbolism. If priests could get married, they'd be dropping down, and it's like representing God in a less perfect way than they already are. Because who's a priest married to? The church. He shouldn't be married. This looks like polygamy. When you have a priest who's married to the church and he has a human wife, that's symbolizing polygamy. That's awful. That's a terrible thing for priests to be married. It just messes up this whole thing there. So you can see how important how important marriage is. We could say theologically speaking, and then you have these idiotic arguments. Well, the church should stay out of my bedroom type of thing. And we know what that's about, right? Just the contraception. But the misunderstanding that people with that attitude take the natural level as primary, and they take these other two levels as intrusions. Like this is what I think about marriage is number one, and what you priests, what you think about marriage, you're not married. How do you even know what marriage is supposed to be, right? When it's priests who know primarily, this is where marriage comes from. Marriage is primarily the result of theology. God had this idea in mind first, and he created marriage to match up to that one. God had Christ in mind first, and then he knew he wanted to unite Christ with humanity to himself, and then this is secondary. So it's primarily the theological understanding of marriage is first, and everything else is second. So there you go. That is enough for this lesson. It was kind of like two lessons in one. I'm getting better at this, right? All right, let's say a prayer.